All right, my friends. Today we have a really fun story that I'm excited to dive into. I've got Niqua on, who is at Financially Winning on Instagram, and she's also got a travel account, Traveling with Niqua. And what I'm excited to talk about is that she arrived at her debt freedom number while also traveling the world, which is not something I think we associate. I think we often think that in order to pay off debt, you have to give up everything that you love and cut out everything. And that's not the case with her story. So I'm super excited to have you here, Niqua. Welcome to the Money Bear podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chloe. And it's a pleasure to be here today just to chit chat and, just share a relatable story with your audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So tell us a little bit about kind of where you were at the beginning of your journey. I know that you've traveled over 30 countries and over 30 states, but when did you start this debt freedom journey?
Yeah, so my debt freedom journey actually officially started literally at the beginning of the pandemic. I had this idea that after forbearance, when I had graduated from grad school, I kind of got that 6 months of grace period with my student loans. And then I said, okay, I'm going to take the first 6 months, just pay the minimums. And then after that, I was like, well, the first 6 months was no payments. And then the remaining of the year was the 6 months. And I just said, I'm going to just do the minimum payments. And once 2020 rolled around, I said that I would basically start tackling my student loans. So
Mhm.
I had a little over 21,000 total. Most of that was grad school loans. I do have an MBA, so I did go to grad school, and then I had a little bit from undergrad. And my journey just basically started with, listen, I didn't really grow up in a household where I knew much about, in terms of like, I knew hearing my parents like, oh, they have debt, they have like all these different things that they're paying. That was not my upbringing. I grew up in the Virgin Islands. That's where I'm from.
Mhm.
And I always just knew that my parents just talked about, like, having money saved and kind of doing the thing. I never really heard them talk about having like credit card debt and things like that. So I never really grew up in a household where I thought that, yeah, student loans, I'll just keep them forever kind of thing. I
Right.
just knew personally that I just wanted to get rid of it. Honestly, like I just wanted to just get rid of my student loans. That was like my only debt that I had. And I was like, yeah, let's just get it.
I love that. So you went and you paid off $21,000 of student loan debt in, I think you said, about 11 months. That
Yes.
is wild. And then the fact that you're like, I was also traveling the world during this time, I think is even more wild. So, what are kind of some of the things that you did in order to pay off such a large amount of debt in such a short period of time?
Yeah, one of the things I would say is, the pandemic was definitely, of course, a terrible time for the entire world. But the one thing that did come out of the pandemic that worked for me was, that focus, basically.
Mhm.
I had that time to maybe not do as many outings as I would have normally done. And yes, I traveled, but it did slow down,
Yeah.
right? So, of course, I wasn't doing as much traveling as I would have normally been doing. So, that did help me to kind of just be like, all right, well, I have this money, like, let me put this towards something else.
Mhm.
And one of the things for me with debt freedom is because I wanted my money to be freed up completely so that I can continue traveling and even increase my travels. So
Mhm.
that was one of the motivations as well behind my debt free journey personally. The main thing was like, if I get rid of these student loans, there's more money for me to go more cool places. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I focus also on, increasing income as well. That's a big thing. I, of course, cut out like expenses that I was just like, this is just a bunch of extra things. I don't really care too much about this. But I kept those other things like travel in my budget, still saved money towards that. Even though the world was a little slowed down at that
Mhm.
point, I was still kind of putting my money towards traveling and getting that money stacked away in my travel fund. So that those were the things that I was focusing my money on. But some of the things that I just did in general was focus on increasing income, focus on cutting some of the expenses that I really did not care about, and then I just put money towards the things that I did care about.
Yeah, I love that you're highlighting it's like this is what was important to me. Was like the reason I wanted to cut down on these other things that weren't important to me is so I could have more money for the stuff I cared about, which was travel. So that's what I
Exactly.
mean, we preach that a lot on the Money Bear podcast and at Clo Bear on our blog. It's values-based budgeting and values-based spending, I feel like is the most powerful because it's like it doesn't feel like a chore. Like it's like you're taking all the resources you have, and money is our biggest resource, right? So it's like, let me use this to create my dream life right now rather than being like,
Exactly.
let me just wait until retirement when I can, do whatever I want with my time. So I got to plug our free guide because if you go to the moneyrightguide.com, you can grab a free budgeting template and videos on how to do values based budgeting because I do think it's a game changer for you with budgeting. Did you do a spreadsheet? Did you use apps? Like, was there a specific approach you took other than the values based approach?
Yeah, I actually used an app and I did use when I was heavily in my debt-free journey, I also use printables that I actually sell like on my Etsy
Mm,
shop too. So I focus on using that paper when I really need to reconcile and kind of get down and dirty. But I also use an app as well where that was able to just help me, really track my expenses. I
mhm.
do the zero-based budgeting method as well. And I still do that to this day. That's the thing, like just because I'm debt free, it doesn't mean that I just stop budgeting or I
Right.
stop, doing the steps that kind of got me to this point. I still literally maintain, some of those financial habits. And that's how I'm able to kind of stay debt free, if that makes sense. Because I'm still going back to my core values and what makes sense for me and what, means the most to me personally.
Yeah. So, do you want to shout out the app you used?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I use the Every Dollar app.
Okay.
That's one of the apps that I've been using for quite a number of years. It's definitely at least about like 6 years or so, probably 7 at this point. But
Okay.
I've definitely used that for quite some time. So yeah, that's the app that I use
Nice.
personally.
And that's a zero-based budgeting app. So I always like to hear what technologies people use because so many different things work for so many different people, and it's nice to know what's available and what is working. I was curious if it was like a YNAB or things like that. YNAB I know is like everybody's favorite, but it's
Yeah.
so much. It's like there's so much
Yeah.
data and so much like it was overwhelming to me. I couldn't do YNAB.
Yeah, I think like I did look into YNAB at some point, and I try to just tell like even like my clients personally, like when I'm working with them one on one, I'm like, hey, these are all the tools that are available. Find one that works for you.
Right.
Because
And it's
like for
okay
me,
to like
like
try
it's
and not like
okay.
stuff. Mhm.
Exactly. Like it's okay if like you try this app and you hate it, or you tried a budget planner and you don't like having to like write all
Right.
the time. Like maybe a spreadsheet may work for you, and other people they are intimidated by spreadsheets and things
Right.
like that. So I
Mhm.
always tell people that doesn't mean that you have to just do the spreadsheet, because that's what looks like the norm of budgeting. You
Mhm.
just need to find a strategy that works for you and also your lifestyle. A lot of
Yeah.
people also forget that, let's say you're a parent or you are someone that's always traveling or you have other things to take care of. You may not have the time to be tracking, every single thing. So then
Mhm.
you may want to consider a whole completely different budgeting method where you're only just setting up more so like accounts and they're kind of just going in with like percentages and whenever that's done and you kind of do it like that. So I
Mhm.
always tell people that I did what worked for me
Yeah.
and and finding, the best strategy for that.
No, I love that you mentioned that because it's so true. There's so many different ways to budget. I think so many people who avoid budgeting, it's like they think it's only tracking every single dollar in a spreadsheet and they
Yeah,
think it's miserable, but it's like we can find out what works for you based off of your strengths, based off of how you learn because there's so many different ways to budget out
so
there. And I
many.
I love that you have printables. Shout out your Etsy shop. What's the name of it?
Yeah, it's financially winning. So I have, a variety of different printables on there. I'm a very visual person. So the reason I created the Etsy shop during my debt-free journey was because I'm a very visual person. So I
Mhm.
wanted to track my debt-free journey and like my percentages of like, how close I was. So I used like my student loan tracker to kind of track every time I was like making a payment. And then I used like my debt free tracker, for example. And I did like my photo shoot with my debt free tracker, just all colored in.
Yeah.
and then, using the budget sheets when necessary to just, jot down a few things. So yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. I think that printables and like actual physical planners can work really well too for people who might be neurodivergent or people who struggle with
exactly.
attention. Because for me, I love using like a physical planner, but I also use like a Google Calendar for like my schedule and things like that. But sometimes just having that break from looking at a screen and like having something tangible that I can like sit down with and plan out my week, it feels good. And I think same
Exactly.
for like for being able to write things out. Sometimes it's like I need a break from the screens. So then it's the planner, it's the, maybe it's the cash envelopes, maybe it's the whatever works for you. So very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your journey of the massive debt payoff, which I also have to say, I did the same thing for the pandemic was a blessing in that it made it way easier to save money, to say no to things, to really amp up those efforts. And I'm so glad that I did take the advantage of those couple of years to really put as much as I could away because what's crazy is a couple years, or even in your case, 11 months of really buckling down and doing the work can set you up for the rest of your life. And it's like
Listen, that
crazy.
is so true. It's so crazy. And I try to tell people, even if you're not like that long term or that freaks you out to think like, oh, well, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, everyone's journey is going to be different. I try to tell people, take it like each quarter, take it every
Hmm.
3 months at a time.
Yeah.
I think you could be able to manage the 3 months, right? So you can say, now I'm currently in Q3. Like, what is kind of like my financial focus for Q3?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like the
So
12-week year. There's a book called, I think, 12-week year, where it's like
oh, nice.
exactly what you said. It's breaking the year into quarters where you're, rather than trying to focus on everything that you want to accomplish in a whole year, let's just look at what's the next 12 weeks looks like because then you get to reset more often. You also get to like, it's more top of mind. You don't lose sight of those bigger goals. And that's what I tell people too with even like the budgeting is like if a month budget is too big and too scary, try a
Break
2
it
week.
down.
Yeah, try 2 weeks, try a week. If you have to, try a day, to make it more manageable for sure.
That makes complete sense. And one of the things I always tell people too is that initially, before I even began my debt free journey,
Mhm.
I literally gave myself like 2 years. You know what I
Mm,
mean? I didn't know how long it would have actually taken me or not, but I was like, I kind of spit it up like 20, it was almost 22K, right? So over
yeah.
21,000, almost 22K. My thought process was like 11K.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, I think I could do 11K a year. And then I
Mhm.
broke it down to like, what would that look like per month? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And, I found the ways to extra things to put, more money here. When I go back through my account, saw that I was making $25 payments towards my student loans.
Mm,
$50 payments, 100, like it wasn't always large sums of, money. All of that added up and it aided in me becoming debt free in that period of time as well. So if I was able to squeeze an extra $25 savings from another budget category, let's say that month, I would have put it towards my student loans,
mm. I love that because it's like the power of small steps. Also the power of like a goal that you're so clear on because I will say the beauty of tracking your goals and tracking your progress is as you make progress, you get excited, you get reinvigorated for the journey. And so then you are constantly thinking about what else can I put onto this? Like you're like excited to be putting money onto your debt because it feels so good to be making progress towards what you really truly want, which in your case was that debt freedom. So you cut your timeline in half. That's amazing.
pretty much.
Yeah, that's wild. But like, I love the small steps because they do add up. And I mean, obviously, I focus a lot on investing and helping people build wealth through that. And it's the
Hmm.
same thing. It's like if you can do $10, put $10 in. If you can put $25 and put $25, it doesn't matter. But what matters is you're starting and you're getting into the habit of it because that's huge. So you had mentioned in your journey that you really focused on increasing your income. Was there anything specific that you did or any tips that you'd like to share?
Honestly, I just need to leave that dusty job. Like, like it was just that simple. I really just realized that I had just outgrown what I was
Yeah.
doing at that time. And it was time for me to really use the skills that I have, the experience that I've earned and, leveled up with over the years to do better for myself,
Yeah.
And whether that was focusing on like, well, hey, I need to work on like a promotion. Like during my debt free journey, like I fought to really get myself a
Hmm.
promotion because I was like, I need to get this extra money in here, to be able to put towards my debt freedom journey. And then I also focus on, listen, eventually I'm going to have to just, kind of move up out of here because
Yeah.
at a certain point it was like, it's time for me to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
especially when that's like the biggest impact you can have. I mean, there's been studies done. I think it was Forbes who did that study that showed that if you stayed at a
mhm,
job for more than 2 years, it cut your lifetime earnings in half, which is crazy. So
exactly.
even earlier today, I had a coaching call with somebody who is 24, and she's like, "What were some things that you wish you had known at 24?" And I was like, "I wish I had switched jobs more often, honestly." And like
Exactly.
everything worked out, but I would have seen such bigger strides in my income and got into 100K and 130K a whole lot faster had I stepped outside my comfort zone, applied somewhere else, and like left every 2-ish years. Now, I wasn't too far behind 2-ish years. I think the longest I stayed at a job was like 4 years, whereas my other
Gotcha.
jobs were like 3 years. So it didn't impact me that much. And then obviously I quit to do this full time. But that's definitely, I think that our generation before us, when they had pensions and things like that, loyalty was
Yeah.
rewarded. So it made sense to stay at a job for your whole career. It made sense for you to, stick with somebody. But now, in a world where we don't have pensions and retirement is on us, and we were doing what we can to build wealth in a difficult system, moving jobs every couple of years does make sense for a lot of us.
It does, and I think one of the things I had to just realize was you're I had to realize that I was doing this for myself
Yep.
and not where it's like I was feeling guilty
Hmm.
for, moving on basically. Because of course, it doesn't mean that the people you work with were terrible. It doesn't always mean that, right? Like I had some pretty great coworkers and
Right.
things like that. But I just knew like eventually, even, when I was able to work out like a promotion and things like that, I knew that at the end of the day, I still needed to up my income earning potential
Hmm.
to be able to get to the financial goals because debt freedom for me, that was just like the first baby step. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like personally, that was just my first baby step, getting myself like out of the student loan debt, being comfortable with that. My main thing was now it's time for serious wealth building, you know?
Yeah.
Like that is what I knew for a fact. Like, and, staying there, another promotion wouldn't have done it for me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I would have definitely been just stifling myself. So even after my debt-free journey, as I said, like I focused on making sure that I was always seeking out those opportunities to increase my income and focus on the money management. Because a lot of
Hmm.
people also think that, they're going to just out earn their spending and they're going to be okay. But I try to tell people all the time that you're not truly going to out earn your spending because you don't know how to actually control, the money that you have coming in. So just because you're spending X amount of dollars now, you're not going to automatically just stop spending money when you get more money,
Yep.
like
Lifestyle inflation.
lifestyle creep, exactly. Lifestyle creep, as they call it, lifestyle inflation. Like you're going to also want to increase the money that you're spending things on. So,
Hmm.
yes, you did earn more, but then you're now matching up your expenses with that increased income. So you still don't have anything, any little wiggle room to be able to help you out to meet those different financial goals and just live life in general. So
Right.
I always tell people that although I had always focused on finding ways to increase my income, yes, I've, upgraded my lifestyle because I don't think that it's a bad thing to,
Hmm.
spend on different things, but I focus more on that value based spending. And I was like, I'm increasing my income to this, this is what I'm willing to increase my expenses to that doesn't stifle me.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's a very balanced approach because it's so easy for, especially in creating content online, I feel like it's so easy for us to follow in like one extreme where it's like,
Yes.
you got to be debt free at all costs. And like, it doesn't matter if you're miserable in the process. Like, you got to be debt free
Yeah.
at all costs. And then there's the other stream of like, live your life, YOLO, you only live once. And it's like so
Right.
important to find a balance that works for you in between because again, for most of us probably aren't going to get out of debt in 11 months. Sometimes it's going to take a couple of years at least, depending on
Yeah.
what kind of situation it is. And so you've got to be in it for the long game. You've got to be able to make it livable, to not feel miserable because your life is happening. Like this is your life, you can't be unhappy while it's all happening. And it sounds like you found a very good balance because you were also traveling. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you were able to also make that work while really aggressively paying off your debt?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned while I was in grad school, I focused on really honing in my travel hacking skills.
Mm.
So I've been travel hacking for quite a number of years now. And I actually knew about travel hacking before I knew that was travel hacking from my mom because I knew that she did have an like American Airlines like branded credit card. And
Mhm.
when I was in college, like she would be like, "Oh, let me check my miles. Like, I may be able to buy your flight or whatever." So I didn't know that was travel hacking at the time. So I did have an idea now that I know what it is that, oh, she was basically travel hacking,
Yeah.
which is so cool. But one of the ways that I reduce my travel expenses quite a lot is by travel hacking. So for those who, may not be familiar with travel hacking, it's basically just using reward points and miles to reduce your costs, say for flights, hotels, and things like that. Primarily, when people say travel hacking, they are talking specifically about reward travel credit cards.
Mhm.
So, again, these are strategies that I personally use to reduce my travel expenses. But I tell people that I had the money management down pat.
Mhm.
So I was not just, running up credit cards, of course, during my debt free journey or even prior, trying to get these points, right? But I used them strategically, made sure I paid off my credit card in full while on my debt free journey. And I racked up those different points and miles to be able to still take those flights and, book those hotels.
Mhm. Amazing. Do you have a favorite credit card that if somebody was like, "Tell me one credit card that I should get, Nika," what would you say?
Yeah, I would say for like a beginner person, normally we always kind of recommend the Chase Sapphire Preferred. And the reason is because it's a card that has a very low annual fee, but the
Mhm.
perks are
I
superb.
love my Chase Sapphire Preferred. Like, and I haven't even switched to the Reserve yet. I need to switch to the Reserve. I've just been like, meh, do I really need it? But it's like the rewards you even get from the Reserve, which is a $500 annual fee, which I would have never thought I would consider before. But the rewards, just if you get the like, even the sign on bonus itself, I think is like almost $1,500 worth of free travel, which pays for 3 years of that card. And I'm like, oh, I might need to go ahead and upgrade. I just haven't made the move yet.
Yeah, I tell people all the time when you're trying to really truly decide, like, which one will kind of work best for you, is that you need to work backwards. The
Mhm.
reason a lot of people
Mm.
recommend the Chase Sapphire Preferred, if you're kind of not really sure exactly what you want to do as yet, is because Chase, for example, is considered as a flexible currency. So
Yep.
all that means is that the Chase points that you earn, you don't have to just use them for one specific thing. Your Chase points can turn into hotel points, they can turn into airline points, they can also be booked for rental cars. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Cash
People can use
back. Even like you can
everything.
shop with it. You can do everything. It's their ultimate rewards program. It's amazing. I felt very validated when you said Chase because I was like, that would be what I would say too. It's like even the Chase, like Freedom Unlimited and the Chase, like if you didn't want a fee card, they're also part of the ultimate rewards universe. And it's like that ultimate rewards universe is legit.
Yeah, Chase definitely is one of the best, programs out there to at least begin with. Of course, you can branch out to some of those other things if you're trying to really get some
Yeah.
advanced travel hacking skills in there. But I definitely recommend that Chase Sapphire Preferred card. because it's a very amazing travel card to start with. And as you said, Chase has those other like no annual fee cards, and that's considered as a Chase trifecta. And
Mm,
what that just means is that you're going to use the Freedom, you're going to use the Freedom Unlimited to earn all the extra points, but then you transfer them and you combine them with your Chase Sapphire.
hmm.
And the Sapphire card is how you're actually going to be able to transfer to the hotel or the airline to book your free travel.
I love that. Very good. I
Yeah,
that's the one I recommend usually as well, unless they want the no fee one. But I'm like, listen, the $95 fee based off of like as long as you're reverse engineering it and making sure it's worth the cost to you,
exactly.
there's nothing wrong with paying for a fee. But again, going back to the like asterisk, the disclaimer, this is all if you are already practicing good credit card habits to begin with. We never want to encourage somebody to try travel hacking if you struggle with credit card debt, if you're not able to make those payments, if you're not paying it off in full every month. You got to first handle that and make sure you're good there because we don't want people getting into trouble with credit card debt. That's for sure.
Exactly. And I was
Mhm.
going to say as well that in addition to travel hacking, I set up a travel sinking fund.
I love
Okay.
that.
So I don't always pay with points and miles. I still use cash to be able to pay for certain things because when you do start accumulating points and miles, you might want to start saying like, hey, I'm going to save this up for like my big family vacation.
Yeah.
So if I'm taking a quick trip to, let's say I'm going to New York, you might say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to pay the $200 or the $300 round trip flight with cash versus using my points. You can use your points obviously for anything that you would like, but for me, I have also just still used cash for when it makes sense.
hmm
So if you're still working through the credit card debt and things like that, it doesn't mean that you can't travel. All you need to do is save for it in a travel sinking fund. When I was in grad school, I was working, but I was still a grad student, you know?
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to be putting like all this money towards travel, but I was being strategic with, $50 here, $100 here. And
hmm
all of that added up because it didn't overwhelm me when I did find a good travel deal. Let's
Yeah.
say I found a travel deal and the flight was $300. The last couple of months, I've been putting 50, 100 here and there. I at least would have enough in that account to cover my flights.
hmm
Then I would just have to come up with a savings plan for the hotel activities and things like that. So don't be discouraged if you're unable to really tap into travel hacking right at this moment. Doesn't mean that travel is impossible for you. You're just going to have to be a little bit more strategic with finding those ways to get the travel deals and just save towards travel incrementally.
Yeah. Do you have any like favorite website that you use to find your travel deals? Like I love Skyscanner. I've been a Skyscanner girly for a really long time because I always loved
Yeah.
the option to put in anywhere. And like I know Kayak does that too. I know Hopper does that. I know you can do it with Google Flights now too. Do you have a go-to favorite?
Yeah, I would say Google Flights is definitely my favorite
Mm.
because they offer a lot of different analytics that a lot
Mm.
of people don't really know about per se. Like they
Okay.
know you can use Google Flights, right? Like everybody knows about Google Flights by now, but a lot of people still don't know about some of the analytics and like the price tools and graphs that they have embedded in there to really help you to see, is this truly the best deal? So
Yeah.
I would say, for finding those flight deals, I always tell people if you can be flexible. And I know
hmm
people hate hearing that sometimes because they're like, well, I don't have unlimited, time to just go wherever I want to. So maybe I did find a deal, but I have to put in for PTO and that's not working out for
Mm.
me or whatever the case may be. So I tell people if you're unable to be flexible, right? What you can do is think about ways of like, how can I save money?
hmm
Let's say you live in a state like New York City. Okay, you live in New York, but you know that New York, for example, has multiple airports. They have
hmm
multiple international airports. So let's say you typically always search JFK.
hmm
Google Flights allows you to actually enter multiple airport destinations and origins. So let's
Okay.
say you're trying to figure out, well, which airport in New York is best for me to fly out of? Where can I get the deal? You might look for a flight from, let's say, LaGuardia, because you're probably closer driving.
hmm
But then if you check JFK at the same time, is going to then show you, oh, JFK is actually cheaper, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you might want to just figure out like which airport works for me. If you're living in a city or a state, let's say you're not in New York, but you may be a 2 hour drive away,
Mm-hmm.
that might be worth it for you if you're saving hundreds of dollars on a flight to take it from JFK. You know what I mean? You may want to just leave your small airport,
Yeah, no,
leave
fully.
your small airport, save all these hundreds of dollars. So Google Flights allows you to also search from multiple airports for the same deal that you're trying to look for.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're gonna make me start using Google Flights now.
Yeah. So if you do have like a set destination in mind, you can definitely use that search function and kind of, toggle between different airports. If you are flexible with where you're going to go, then that's definitely another
Mhm.
way to find a really great deal and just kind of using that explore feature with Google Flights. But people think that you must type in like where you want to go. If you're flexible with, listen, I just want to take a vacation. Let's say you're interested in going anywhere in Europe, right?
Yeah.
You can use the map function on Google Flights, drag the map or type in Europe as the entire continent, and it will start dropping down a list of places in Europe of where you can go to. You can even toggle between the price that you would like to pay
Mhm.
for that specific flight. So let's say you want to go to Europe. It's not in the summer when it's really busy. You're kind of going to fall, right? Another
Mhm.
travel tip. You want to travel when everybody else is not traveling to those
Yep.
destinations.
Mhm.
So when I visited Europe for the first time a few years back, we went into the fall. We did
Mhm.
not do a European summer. As popular as it is, we did a European fall. We were able to do 4 countries in Europe, right? For a fraction of the cost. So
Mhm.
you can use those tools, Google Flights, to just drag it on the continent and it can start spitting out, things that are in your price range that you're willing to pay for. And then again, knowing when to travel gets you great deals as well.
Seriously, I mean, I feel like the majority of the trips that I've been on are not in I almost never travel in the summer. Like, I almost
Yeah,
always travel in the fall or the winter, especially being from Chicago. It's like those are the times I want to leave Chicago. So it's like,
exactly.
let me get out. But yeah, it's so much cheaper, like, especially even like the first weeks of December and like right after Thanksgiving, before Christmas. It's a really great time to buy in or buy flights in Europe as well. One of the things I've done, I was literally looking at flights earlier today because I'm going to visit my friend in Portugal. And I was like, man, it's really expensive. So I live in San Diego now, but flying from San Diego to Portugal is much more expensive than flying from Chicago to Portugal or really anywhere in Europe. So I was like, well, let me look and see like what is a flight from San Diego to London. And that's like 400 bucks, 300 bucks, whereas when I was looking at and then I could go from London to Lisbon and that's like a
Exactly.
hundred, which is
100. Yes.
it's cutting my costs like in half. And I'm like, okay, we could make this work for sure. So it's all about, like you said, just getting creative and flexible in terms of where you enter and where you exit as well. Cause it's like you could save $1,000 and make it a lot more affordable. But some people prioritize convenience. They don't want to, have to drive anywhere. They want it to be a direct flight and things like that. I understand both sides, but it's nice to know that there are other options out there. So I'm definitely going to have to hop on Google Flights after this. I didn't know you could do all that.
Yeah, they have a lot of different tools. And then they also can tell you like when the prices has been dropping as
Yeah.
well. So you can truly see like, okay, is this like a really good deal or what has the last like 30 days look like? There's price graphs. There's all sorts of things you can use in there. And I love getting the price alerts as well. So if
Mhm.
I'm checking for a flight that's, a little further out, I always sign up for price alerts so that I'm getting notified like, hey, your flight dropped in price or it went up. So I can
Mm.
start being like, okay, let me figure out like what's best for me. And regarding the convenience tip, as you said, that's kind of where points would come in. Like for
Yeah.
me, for example, like if I'm like, okay, I don't feel like going to another airport at this time, maybe it doesn't work for me at this time. Like I would then, look to using my points and miles because
Mhm.
that's what I'm racking them up for is to use for my benefit.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I approach it as well. Is like, I'll look if it's convenient to go cheaper, then I'll do that. And if not, I'll just pay with my points. Especially now with the business. I mean, the business has so many expenses. I think I have over like 200,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points just chilling. And I'm like,
Nice.
what are we gonna use that for? And I'm like, it's only
No, that's
July. So I like to gift my parents flights using my Ultimate
mm,
Rewards points because it's like it doesn't actually cost me all that much. Sometimes it'll cost me a little extra to like, pay for accommodations and things like that, but it's still a really nice gift that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So,
no,
um,
that's awesome.
I love the Chase Ultimate Rewards program. It feels weird saying that I love like a big bank in the US, It's like I know our systems are broken and big banks are often the enemy, but I gotta say they got those good credit cards. They got some stuff that I love.
I'm not even gonna lie. Honestly, like Chase is definitely one of my preferred, point system. I love them a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different ways for you to earn those points. And again, going back to that tip about transferring your points out,
Hmm.
sometimes it's much better to just find an airline that you can transfer points to
Hmm.
versus booking in the portal. Because a lot of times people
Mm.
think that because you have the ultimate rewards, for example, like you're stuck to just booking in the portal.
Hmm.
Like, let's say you found a flight on JetBlue in the portal and they're asking you for, I don't know, 35,000 points.
Yeah.
If you literally just go on jetblue.com and do the same exact search, you can see that JetBlue might say, oh, you can only give us 20,000 for the
Yeah.
same exact flight. Then you can just transfer 20,000. You just save yourself 15,000 points.
That's crazy. See, this is stuff I don't even know about. All right. I'm taking notes over here. Especially if it's like an easy thing to do where you're just like, okay, let me just like take a look at this and do a quick search. So
Yeah.
amazing. Well, all right. I have a couple more questions for you. I always like to give our audience like 3 tips. So, what are 3 tips that you would give to somebody who is trying to pay off debt, but also wants to live their life while it's happening?
Yeah, so I would say one of my first tips is being realistic with what you can truly accomplish. I know it's, a little intimidating sometimes when you are seeing people online, oh, I became debt free in a year, I became debt free in
Hmm.
2 years, and you're still, struggling to pay that credit card off or whatever. I would literally just say is like, don't let social media intimidate you for your journey.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be my first tip.
Hmm.
My second tip is truly just becoming real with yourself about what your debt total is. A
Hmm.
lot of times people don't want to face their debt number, and I think that does more harm than good for them, right?
Hmm.
Because you have no clue how much you're paying in interest on these credit cards. You don't even know what the totals are. You know you have student loans, but you're not even sure, like, who's your service provider, what your amounts are that you owe on the debt. So I would say just, coming up with that plan, sitting down, making that plan for all your totals, putting them out there. I would say categorize them as well. So it's easy for you to see that, okay, this is a personal loan, it's this amount, and all the terms of the loan. Put all your student loans under the student loan section. Put all your credit cards and, the interest rates, what your minimum payments are. Just literally create a picture for what your total debt is and then create your debt free plan based off of that. A lot
Hmm.
of times people get overwhelmed when they think about, like, well, I got all these different debts. Sometimes just take one category at a time. Let's
Yeah.
say you're just trying to focus on, okay, I want to just get all these credit cards paid off, right? I'm not worried about my student loans, or my car loan is a low rate, you know what I mean? Low interest rate. So I'm going to kind of just, gradually pay that off. But the credit cards are killing me. You can then say, "Oh, well, I want to be credit card debt free." So you just focus on, tackling and, knocking out the credit cards in that section. And then,
Hmm.
of course, you're still going to be paying, your other debts and things like that. But the credit cards are going to be like your main focus.
Yeah, for
And
sure. No, I love that.
yeah. And then my third tip in general would be focus on seeing ways that you can earn extra. One of the things that I kind of told you guys throughout this conversation is I focus on ways to earn extra. So whether that was doing things temporarily as a side hustle, it does not mean, you have to be killing yourself out every single day. You're working extra every single day, but it might just be, hey, for 6 months, my goal is to make X amount of money doing side hustles, right? And once I get to that goal, I'm done. I'm just going to
Hmm.
continue working my regular job and then work, with that money and finish off my debt-free journey. But you would be surprised of, that 6 months of just saying, hey, I'm going to do a bit extra, not to, overwhelm myself, but doing just enough where you have a realistic goal in mind. Or it would be switching jobs, utilizing resources, utilizing things like LinkedIn
Yep.
to figure out ways that you can earn extra money, whether that's just, as I said, grabbing a side hustle for 6 months at a time, or it's switching jobs completely, or making a pivot completely into a different industry. That would be my other tip as well, because as you earn more and you're focused on the real money management, you're going to be able to see where you can have that balance, what based on what you're earning at the time and what you'll be using to just do things for fun.
Yeah, 100%. I think we so often skip the tip about increasing income because it seems so simple, but it's so true. I mean, it's like the 80-20 when we're talking about effort versus
Right.
impact. So I love that. And I also love the idea of just being like, it's 6 months. We have seasons of life. And sometimes our season of life requires us to buckle down and cut back a lot of spending. Sometimes it requires us to focus on increasing our income. Sometimes it's time to take a break and not worry about it. But it's like getting really focused on rather than trying to be like, oh, for the next 5 years, I'm going to go do this thing. That's a long time. We don't know what's going to change between
Exactly.
now and next year. So it's like, well, I at least have control for the next month, the next 2 months, the next 3 months, whatever that is. So amazing tips. Well, before I get to the two final fun questions, tell
All
everybody
right.
again, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yes. So again, you can find me on Financially Winning on social media. So I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then the travel for all the travel tips and all the hacks. I am at Traveling with Nika, and I'm also on YouTube. So if you like, watching vlogs and getting those, real in-depth travel tips and hacks, I also have a YouTube channel at Traveling with Nika as well. But yeah, I have free resources on both of my business pages. So my website for Financially Winning is it's financiallywinning.com, and Traveling with Nika is travelingwithnika.com. So yeah.
Awesome. And we'll leave links to all of that in the show notes as well. All right, Nika, I'm excited to ask you my two fun questions. So, my first
All
question
right.
is, what is your very first money memory?
Let's see. This one can definitely vary whenever like I'm really thinking about it.
Right?
But one of the things I would say that definitely stuck with me from my childhood was my dad doing what we say in the Virgin Islands as patting our hand. So what that means is, and different Caribbean islands call it different things, but all it means is like everyone is kind of coming together and they're saving a specific amount of money, but there's one person that's kind of like the bank, basically.
Okay.
So they're coming together, let's say it's 10 people, and they all decided that this is the pot, right? And each month, everyone would eventually get their turn, basically.
Mm,
So I remember growing up and knowing my dad kind of being one of those bankers, per se, right? Controlling those partner hands. And that was a way for people to save lump sum amounts of money. So a lot of people
yeah.
would take their turns, whether they were going on like a big family vacation. So they would get, let's say it was $5,000. They would get that 5,000 right before their vacation, or they would get that 5,000 right before, let's say the holidays for Christmas.
Right.
So yeah, that was a cool way. And a lot of other Caribbean islands, as I said, they use that. They call it different things. We say pat na hand in the Virgin Islands. And it's
That's so cool.
definitely an amazing way for just community to, help each other out, basically, where you're building that trust with people. Because again, my island was 8.5 square miles. You know everyone, you're related to everyone. So yeah.
That is so cool. Like, what a community centric way of helping each other out. So,
Yeah.
like, it reminds me of, I remember reading an article way back in the day about minor league baseball players. and how you really don't get paid a lot when you're a minor league baseball player. And it's like your chances of making it pro is like 1%, something super crazy low. And so a lot of these kids will form together kind of these little, like, I guess similar to what you're talking about, pat in a hand.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get together and they would all contribute a portion of the income that they were making to
Mm-hmm.
basically say, like, hey, if one of us goes pro, we're going to help everybody out in this group.
Pull from that pot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
nice.
We're gonna, like, if one of us makes it, like, we're all betting on this person. And I don't remember if they're putting money towards it as like insurance, or if they're putting money, or if they're just signing a contract that says, like, if one about out of this 10 makes it to whatever, to pro levels, this is how much money
Mm-hmm.
you're going to share with the rest of us. So it's like this
Wow.
communal thing where it's like you have more of a shot of at least getting some type of payoff, because it's a big risk to go into minor league baseball. So that's kind of what that reminded me of. I think that's really cool. Um,
Gotcha.
Very cool. So then my second question is, what is something you're obsessed with right now? Whether that's like TV show you're binging, or a podcast episode you can't stop listening to, or a book series, like, is there something that you're just totally obsessed with right now?
Yeah, I would say that Jack Ryan, that series on
Oh.
Amazon Prime Video, li listen, that series is so amazing. Once you kind of get past like the first couple episodes in like season one, it's definitely binge worthy.
Okay.
And they have like a total of 4 seasons, so that's definitely what I've been really, loving lately.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime, everybody. Very cool. Well, Niqua, is so nice to meet you. I'm so thankful that you came on to share all of your different tips about debt freedom and travel hacking. And like I said, guys, we'll leave links to all of her things down in the show notes.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Chloe. It was great to, be here today. Thank you for taking the time to interview me, and I look forward to connecting with your audience.
Thank you so much for listening to the Money Bear podcast. If you've made it this far, do us a favor, take 2 seconds, rate, review, and subscribe. It seriously means the world to me. And if you just take a sec to do that, I will appreciate you endlessly. And if you do, let me know on Instagram and I'll thank you personally. So, got that. And of course, since we were talking about anything financial on this show, please note that nothing on this show is intended as financial advice. I don't know you, unfortunately. And because of that, I cannot tell you what to do with your money. You got to work with a financial professional who knows your situation, who is preferably a fiduciary. And keep in mind that everything that we talk about on this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It's all my opinion. So, there's that. If you want to see our full terms and conditions, head on over to the show notes. And while you're there, we've got free resources for you to get started on your money journey down in the show notes as well, including a free guide to help you with your budgeting templates and budgeting tutorials and investing 101, understanding the different accounts that are out there. All that good stuff is inside of my free guide, which is also available at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide. And if you're ready to take our relationship to the next level, I am also hosting a monthly investing class. And that investing class, you can find the times we're offering it this month at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/webinar. That link is in the show notes as well. And that's where you have the chance to meet me live and ask those money questions live. It's a good time. We've had over 20,000 people as of recording this join or register. And yeah, it's always nice to meet you guys. So I hope to see you there. Again, all that is available down in the show notes. So thank you again for coming and listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.